started, I think. Let's see if this works.
Hmm.
Oh yeah, we are live. Let's go.
Well, let's go.
This is great.
Yeah. So, are you ready?
Yeah, we're good to go.
Okay then. Hi guys, welcome back to Red Flag Radio F1 YouTube channel. We are here for Austrian Grand Prix preview today. And if you're still confused with what's going on, we are testing a new format with some raw, uncut and fully live sessions right after FP1 and FP2. It will be a race preview with just us, real-time thoughts and all the insights you need heading into the qualify and race day. Do let us know in the comments with your insights and how do you think this weekend will shape up for all the teams and drivers as we are in Red Bull Ring, where the circuit might be short on distance, but it's never short on drama. So let's break it all down team by team for the Austrian Grand Prix. Let's start with the team who is dominating on charts at least, McLaren.
Woo!
Lando Norris topped in FP1. Piastri looked solid and he finished P2. So they look absolutely dialed in and they are in just league of their own right now. Right?
Yeah, so the best part is that the McLaren car is so sorted that even when they got Alex Dunn as the second driver to test him out, he was still P4. He was just a little under a tenth behind Piastri. So that car is
Yeah.
so fast that even a guy who's driving it for the first time is able to cope with it and thrash it around and be quick. So there is not a shadow of a doubt in my mind that McLaren's gonna do well. And in fact, when we get to the prediction part, spoiler alert, I am going to pray for a McLaren 1-2, but yeah, they're just incredibly fast, and with the upgrades they've brought in, they're just looking indomitable, man. I mean, I don't think any team can touch them even now.
Well, I don't think any other team can touch them apart from the two drivers who are driving for that team because we know how Canadian Grand Prix went, and it was crazy. And Lando Norris was like, "Yeah, it was my fault," but definitely he looks in a much better shape right now. He looks absolutely dialed in, and he was the fastest man in FP1. And I do think he feels that he can grab pole or even race win this weekend because he desperately needs that, right? After all the drama that went in last race.
Exactly, he can't afford to mess this race up even a little bit. Like, even if he does not see a chance at winning the race, at the very least, he has to be up there on the podium and not mess that up by getting into a battle with any driver and specifically his teammate. Because last time he still got away with it because, it was not a double DNF at least. But if it's a double DNF and McLaren loses out on a chunk of points, like 43 points, because of a 1-2 cost, then that's just going to be depressing, and he's going to be hung at the stake at dawn if that happens, and that's just not acceptable. But yeah, man,
Right.
they're looking amazing, and I just hope that Lando has a clean weekend, man.
Absolutely. He needs that. And I think this can be that weekend where it should go well for McLaren. And I feel, judging by the pace they are showing in FP2, they really want that P1 and P2 because Canadian Grand Prix was not that great. But there's that one driver who can always spoil the weekend. And
George Russell.
this is his well, we will talk about George Russell, but I was thinking about the driver whose team, as by all the sides, we know that this is the home team, Red Bull, and Max Verstappen to be exact, because he's always there when it comes to Red Bull ring. He's just too quick. He won 5 races. He's amazing, and even though the car doesn't look that good for this weekend, and they did bring some upgrades, which is on Max Verstappen's car only, but not the best FP session according to me,
Yeah,
right?
that's the thing though. Even though they have some sort of upgrades, we noticed that both Yuki and Max messed up at the same corner. I think it was turn 3, we're going into turn 3, both of them locked up their front. So it doesn't seem like there is a lot of difference in the behavior of the car even with the upgrades. And I wanted to highlight this point specifically is because Max is a much more talented driver than Yuki. No hard feelings to Yuki. This is just plain old facts. And with upgrades, he's still making the same mistakes that Yuki ended up making. So that just goes to draw the parallel between the two drivers and the car's performance, that the upgrades are not doing what the team is expecting them to do. And the reason why I knew that you were going to say Max Verstappen, because of course it's Red Bull's home ring, but home race. But I mentioned George Russell because I feel like he has the better car. So in my mind, realistically, if someone can be the thorn in McLaren's shoe, it's Mercedes, specifically George Russell. As much as I dislike him, I think he's still going to be the driver that is going to fight with the McLarens for the podium positions. But yeah, man, getting back to Red Bull, I don't see much change in their performance here. Maybe we see them in the midfield of the points, which is 5, 6, 7, 4, maybe something along those lines. But yeah, I don't see him on a podium.
Well, if Sonoda gets in like in top 7, I think he would be happy. But
Oh
he
yeah,
did perform well in FP2 because
yeah.
he was like just 0.4 off Max Verstappen, which is very decent for his standard because he's not doing well in last 3, 4 race weekends, and he desperately needs good performance
Hmm.
because it's not going so well. And we always say that the second seat curse is there, so they desperately, especially Yuki Tsunoda, needs a strong weekend at his at Red Bull's home race. So
Yeah.
let's see how that goes. Probably
Forget
we
the home
think.
race and all that. Forget Yuki's second seat curse and all that. They should just burn the second Red Bull seat, man. No one can survive. That seat kills drivers' careers.
Absolutely, man. We are saying that from day one. And I don't think that situation is changing anytime soon unless Nico Hulkenberg joins Red Bull, which we talked about. But I don't think that's happening. But if both drivers can get some crucial points, I think that's the bare minimum they need. And obviously, Verstappen wants to be on that podium. And he just wants to keep his nose clean because this is that one race weekend where he needs to dodge all the penalties that are in place. So let's see how that goes. He was third in FP2, but he did burn 2 sets of softs to get on that P3 spot. So let's see how that goes. But if we are talking about the momentum, there's that one driver which you mentioned, and he has the momentum. George Russell, he was the fastest man in FP1. He won here last year, which we know how he won. He was at right place at right time, and he did win the last race as well. And that was on pure pace. So what do you think? How Mercedes will perform? Considering we saw that Mercedes engines are doing really well here. So, do you think they have some chance, especially Kimi Antonelli as well?
Yeah, so the thing is, we've talked about this before, that the Mercedes engine is preferring cooler environment, right? And what better race than Austria to get a good engine temperature, a cooler engine temperature to get the maximum out of your car. So that is point A. That is of course very important for them to get some sort of big chunk of points in, again to beat Ferrari to the punch for P2. Now,
Yeah.
the thing is, as far as momentum goes, yes, I do, as I mentioned, see George Russell fighting for the podium places. But I don't suppose he's gonna win because simply the McLaren has its aerodynamics sorted better. They have a more reliable car as well. Because even with the temperature conditions favoring Mercedes, you cannot discount the fact that they were unreliable. And it just may be the case that they might have some hydraulic failure or something along those lines, which is not necessarily connected to temperatures. And in that case, of course, the Mercedes drivers are going to be very annoyed, and Mercedes is going to miss out on a chunk of points. But that being said, yeah, I think George was very quick and he should be a podium position holder at the very least. And as far as Kimi Antonelli goes, I think he must be in the points this race, but he's done with his exams as well. So I think he should just
Yeah.
fully send it down the grid without a care in his mind and just go race as fast as you can, because this is the place to do that. If he's an allegory to Max Verstappen, a younger version of Max Verstappen is what people refer to him. This is the perfect place to demonstrate that. This is the perfect place to bag your first win.
Yeah, true. And we saw how punchy he was in Canada as well. He was very close to fighting with Max Verstappen as well, and they could have got maybe 1-2 in Canada. So let's see how that goes. But there's a high possibility that the temperatures will be higher on a Saturday and Sunday. So that can affect some momentum for Mercedes. But so far, they would be pleased with how things are going. It was not the best showing in FP2, but at least in FP1 they were better. So let's see. Probably they will be there in the mix for sure.
Yeah.
But if we are talking about the team who desperately wants to be in mix and they brought some huge upgrades on this track. It's Ferrari. They desperately need a good weekend. And do you think that is coming anytime soon? Because they were a bit dodgy, according to how I saw, and they were not that consistent. They were trying to find all the pace. They were making some mistakes as well. But what do you think? Can they find some performance and find that perfect balance to get some crucial qualifying position and then a better race,
I
right?
I don't know, man. See, the thing is, if I'm not mistaken, they are bringing in floor and rear suspension upgrades. If I'm not wrong about that, and those are two things that are going to massively affect the car's handling if they are those major upgrades and there are major changes in the design. I personally feel whatever the drivers are showing in free practice sessions, they need to get it out of their system, and I'm going to chalk that up to an adjustment period. That the car is suddenly behaving in a spicier or a not spicier way, and they're just simply struggling to get adjusted to that, which is fair and square, man. That is fine. Get it out of your system in the free practice sessions. As Fernando Alonso also said when he had his spin at turn 6, I think. Like, it's better to get it out of the way right now. But that being said, all they need to do, if nothing else, I'm not going to talk about any individual driver getting podium or anything because I don't see that happening. I think they just need to do whatever they've been doing for every weekend so far, is to both of them to be in the top 7, top 6 points, and just cement their position as P2 in the constructors, because this is the place where Mercedes has one of its chances to really close that gap or even leapfrog Ferrari and get back to P2. So I think
Right.
Ferrari's battle is restricted to just both drivers bringing in a good chunk of points and make sure that it's more than Mercedes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the bare minimum that they need at this point because we know McLaren is in a league of their own.
Hmm.
And if something horrible happens at the front, probably then they can be, pushing for that podium. But on raw pace, I don't think that they can get podium as per the initial impressions we are getting. So let's see how that goes. Definitely, they need to find that perfect spot because we know Leclerc has a decent record in Austria. He's that driver who always fights hard, and even Hamilton. But the story so far is he's struggling with all the setup and everything with Ferrari.
Hmm.
So hopefully something better will happen. And yeah, eventually we hope that Ferrari upgrades will click because they are not planning to bring that many upgrades in future. So desperately they need some amazing performance, and same goes for Red Bull as well because we mentioned that they brought upgrades. So both teams are planning to stop their upgrades by maybe Silverstone, so they do need some strong performance there, right? And let's see how that goes with
Yeah,
Ferrari.
yeah, dude. And if they are not planning on bringing any more upgrades past Silverstone, that just means that's a blank check to every other team that's fighting Red Bull and Ferrari, which is Mercedes and McLaren. You're just giving away this information that, look, as per the track conditions, this is what our car can perform like. And then that also
Right.
gives Mercedes and McLaren a strategic edge over them, right? So
Right.
sure, you can focus on 2026 and maybe get an edge next season with the regs changes, but you're still missing out on a large chunk of the constructor standings money, right, this year, because you did not focus on this year as much. So yeah, man, I think if this is pretty much it for Ferrari and Red Bull, you best hope that they can pull the rabbit out of the hat and do some magic here and put Mercedes and McLaren in the shoes of discomfort.
Yeah, they need that. And let's see how that goes. If not Austria, then probably Silverstone is the race where they desperately need some amazing performance.
Mm-hmm.
But if we are talking about upgrades, I think Aston Martin would be happy with the upgrades they brought in Miami, I think. Because in this track, they brought no upgrades. But the performance is looking good. Stroll P4, and he was P3 for the majority of FP2. And he's looking strong in this weekend. Well, if we can replicate that performance in qualifying and race, I would be the happiest person in the whole world. But so far, they're doing well, and there's some performance, and I think they could be that dark horse of this race weekend, right? If everything goes well and according to the script.
I will back you up on the fact that they are a dark horse and something might come up from them, but I must also give you the weekly reminder during one of these videos that Stroll is a window liquor. So you, no matter how much of an apologist you are
I
for
knew.
Stroll, yeah, he's not gonna magically pull out Ayrton Senna performance in qualifying or the race, because I bet my left kidney he's not going to do that well in the qualifying. And now I hope to God he does not do well, because I happen to like both my kidneys. But
We will be back here tomorrow to talk about this.
yeah, I might have a surgical scar somewhere in my abdomen now. But no, I think Alonso is going to be the driver who really shows that Aston Martin is a dark horse. And I will go so far as to say that I expect a decent qualifying performance out of him, somewhere even around P6, P5. But we'll get to that later. But yeah, I think he is one of the very strong contenders for that. Because yeah, as you mentioned, the car just looks very happy on this track, man. It's got no unnecessarily spicy racing lines or racing corners. It's got good temperatures. The elevation changes are all right, and it's just a very simple track for the car to cope with in terms of mechanical performance.
Right. Well, the car looked like the fastest car on top speed at least, so they do
Mm-hmm.
have that pace. Whether it will be replicated in qualifying and race, probably we have to wait. But Alonso has that momentum because he is on 2 race weekends with points, so probably he can extract more points. But there's another team who is doing so well, and we have to mention about Kick Sauber because Bortoleto was P8 in FP2. And we have talked about this that Bortoleto is the driver who extracts performance in qualifying, but something goes wrong in race.
Mm-hmm.
So he had a mega run in FP2. And can he replicate his performance and can he get his first points in this weekend? Because even Sauber brought some upgrades and they are looking in that upward trend so far, and especially Hulkenberg, who has been the driver of the season, I feel, with all the points he has achieved so far. So
Yeah.
whether both drivers can do some magic performance here, let's see. What
Yeah,
are your views?
in fact, you know what? If I recall correctly, in FP1 as well, Bortoleto was P5 or P6. So he was treating that car like a rocket ship, and it's not. We know it's a parrot green tractor. So, and of course, as you mentioned about Hulkenberg, he's of course going to do some magic. I mean, now I'm just almost confident that he's going to be battling one of the Ferraris again for a good chunk of points, and that would be hilarious. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, even if not that, I definitely see them finishing, at least Hulkenberg, I see him finishing top 15 or between P10 and P15, because he's just able to do that. And yeah,
Yeah.
man, Portoletto just needs to find his headspace during the race, because this is a very simple track for drivers. I think the driver workload is relatively lesser here because the temperatures are not that bad. You're not sweating 4 kilograms. The car is much more happy here. There are no insane G forces time after time as you'd see in some of the other tracks, like maybe Spa, for example, or Suzuka. Those tracks are very challenging. But yeah, this track is relatively simple. The weather conditions should ideally help them. So it's perhaps the best chance for Bortoleto to also back some points. Maybe even P10 is fine, man. 1 point is also
Yeah.
something at this point.
Absolutely, man. And he desperately need those points. And I think this could be that race weekend where he can grab some crucial points if qualifying goes according to the script. Talking about Hulkenberg, he did say that he didn't feel the car and he's not feeling the love with the car at the moment. But we know how he performs, and probably he can extract some out of the box performance. Whether he can get top 5 performance again, that's a bit stretch, but probably we can talk about this after the race.
Mm-hmm.
But the other team, Alpine, I think Gasly had a relatively okay day, but Colapinto again nowhere close to even be fighting for that top 10. And we said that this could be Franco's last race as per his 5 race contract. So it's not going well for him so far. I don't know what else I can say. And Alpine, we kind of predicted that this could be that race where the things won't go according to the script because it's not a track which will favor Alpine. But he need a strong weekend, right? Like something out of the box where no one predicted that Franco Colapinto will get some points, and he delivered it. But I don't think that's happening anytime soon.
And it's not gonna happen either. And in fact, I'm going to put the rest of the teams in a single box. Racing Bulls, especially Lawson was having straight up mechanical issues with his steering. So, okay, again, better to get it out in the free practice, but then that is also a reliability concern, and
Yeah.
therefore it's something for Racing Bulls to worry about. Hajar was, I mean, he was trying to figure out the car here, but nothing out of him. Both the Haas boys locking up into turn one, taking the escape road, stuff like that. I don't think Alpine, Haas, Racing Bulls, we're going to see some special performance out of any of these, because especially if you recall, we had a discussion with the F1 script writers, and it is this weekend that Haas doesn't score points because it's the alternate weekend. You remember that
Yeah.
call, right? And yeah,
Absolutely.
it's just not gonna be something that we can, really harp on about. And this is going to be a recollection point in our race review video as well. But yeah, I do hope Colapinto does some magic and just brings one solitary point, because as we kept on mentioning since around the third race of his contract, that's all he needs to do. He just needs to
Yeah.
prove that he's a single point better than Doohan, and then that way he can extend his contract a little bit. But
Yeah.
I'm not feeling very optimistic about that, I'm gonna be honest.
Sadly, that's the situation they are in. And I do agree with you that I don't think he can get those points. But let's see how that goes. And we are left with one team, and that's Williams. I think both drivers were just focusing on long runs, but both drivers were just looking out of the sync with that car. And we know from last two race weekends, it's not going well for Williams. I don't think it will be the story this weekend as well. Maybe it could be that just one off Friday, but so far not so good for both drivers, right? Like Q3 might be a stretch as per what we are seeing so far, but they desperately need some crucial points as well, because the other teams are making some bringing some crucial upgrades, and they would be fighting with Williams if things keep on going like this, right?
I think, you know what, I feel like whatever the disconnect between the driver and the car is for Williams, both drivers, in my opinion at least, are perfectly capable of, gathering those disconnections and misconnections within the free practice sessions. I'm not going to give that much credit, and I'm not going to go so far as to say that Sainz is going to wrap it up and be in the points very easily, but because it's his first season, he's not perfectly sure about his muscle memory with the car. That is a very fair throwaway statement. But I think Albon might be able to, gather it all up and put a nice bow on it and end up P7, P8 or something like that. I just feel like he has the opportunity to learn how the car is behaving and then deliver on some points, which is something Williams desperately needs, because now I think in Canada, I think Sainz got a single point or something, if I'm not wrong,
Yeah.
and that was it. Since the past two races, that is the only point Williams has had. So they had a huge lead since the beginning of the season. They could afford to mess this up a little bit and still have enough buffer to get away with it. But that stops here. I think Austria is
Yeah.
where one of the drivers needs to start bringing points again, and I think that's
Yeah.
going to be Albon.
Hopefully, at least if one driver is there, then I think Williams would be happy, because FP1, their pace was decent. Like they were, I think, P7, P8.
Mm-hmm.
But FP2, I think maybe they were just focusing on long runs, which is something that they should focus on as well. So let's see how that goes. But I think if we have talked about every single team, I think this is the part where we always enjoy. And there's a change, because we will be focusing on qualifying only, and we will be talking about the top five, which I think will put us in a right spot, and we have all the data. I think I'm not saying that we will be 100% correct,
Mm-hmm.
but this is the fun part, and probably it's better to make some mistakes here. So I'll leave it on you. You can go on with the top five predictions you think
So
for the qualifying session.
yeah, so to all five of our viewers, I'm not going to offer a single point of explanation for this, but my top five predictions are: fifth, Fernando Alonso; fourth, Leclerc; third, Verstappen; uh, yeah, and second, probably Norris; and first, Oscar Piastri. And my wild prediction is gonna be, if Verstappen if Russell ends up P3, Verstappen is going to be like P7, P8. I feel like there is going to be some scrap that will lead to the exchange of Verstappen's position with Russell. What I mean by that is, instead of my top 5 predictions including Verstappen on the podium, it's going to be Russell. That's all.
Okay. Interesting. So if it's not Verstappen, then Russell will
Yeah,
be there.
that's the wild prediction. And it's honestly not even that wild. It's realistic, only to be fair.
Okay, interesting. For me, I think P5 will be Charles Leclerc. P4, I think George Russell. P3, I think this will be the interesting one, but I think Oscar Piastri will be P3. P2, I'm going with Verstappen because he's always a driver who extracts amazing performance here. And P1, I think this is something that many people will be surprised, but Lando Norris will be on pole here. That's how I see it. I think he looks dialed in and he can extract that performance, and he desperately needs that.
Mm-hmm. Those
So
are fair
I th
predictions, man. You're right. I mean, honestly, I would have said Norris for P1 as well, but I just felt like it was a little bit of a wishful thinking going on. But yeah, man, let's see. Let's see how this goes.
Yeah, man, I think we are excited, and this is that race weekend where everything can go right as well as wrong because all drivers can fight here. But if you really enjoyed our session, because this was a different one, we hope that you had great time, and probably we will do this more often. We want to interact with you as well. Probably we will have more sessions where we can talk about whatever people are saying. But if you really had great time here, do show this support and do like this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and we will be back for more qualifying insights as well as race previews. But I hope you had great time, but when the drama hits, we are waving the red flag.